Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram
Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
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 Hare
Ram
Hare
Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Ram
Hare
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 Hare Krishna
Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna
Ram Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare
Hare Krishna Hare
Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Hare
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Ram,
Krishna,
Hare Ram,
Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare Ram,
Ram,
Hare Ram,
Hare
Ram
Ram,
Ram, Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Hare
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 Krishna
Ram Hare
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Ram
Ram,
Ram Hare
Ram Ram,
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram
Hare
Hare
Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Hare
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 Krishna
Ram
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Ram Hare
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram
Hare
Hare Ram
Ram,
Ram
Hare
Ram
Ram,
Hare
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 Krishna,
Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna
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 Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare
Ram
Ram Hare
Ram,
Ram
Hare
Ram Ram Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Krishna
Ram,
Krishna
Hare
Hare Ram Hare
Hare
Ram Ram
Ram,
Ram
Hare
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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Krishna Krishna Krishna
Ram
Hare Ram
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Ram
Krishna,
Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare
Ram
Krishna
Hare
Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna,
Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare
Ram Hare
Hare Ram, Hare
Hare
Ram,
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare
Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Ram Hare
Hare
Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare,
Hare
Ram,
Ram Hare
Hare Ram,
Ram
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 Ram,
Ram
Hare
Hare
Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram
Ram Ram,
Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Ram Ram
Hare
Hare Hare
Krishna,
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram Ram Ram
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Krishna
Ram,
Hare
Hare Ram,
Ram
Ram Ram, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Krishna
Ram,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Ram,
Hare
Ram
Ram Hare
Hare
Ram Ram
Hare,
Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Krishna
Ram,
Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Hare
Ram,
Ram
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram
Ram
Ram Ram
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare, Ram, Hare Ram,
Hare
Ram
Krishna
Ram
Hare
Hare
Krishna Ram
Hare,
Ram
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Hare
Ram,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Ram,
Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram
Ram
Hare
Ram,
Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna
Hare, Ram,
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare
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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Ram Ram
Hare Krishna, everyone. So let's start Kirtan.
Hare
And
Krishna,
Hare Krishna Prabhu
Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Vatsala Mataji,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Shiva Prabhu, Ram Sham Prabhu,
हरे हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी।
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So, Brajesh Govinda Prabhu. Brajesh Govind Prabhu. Are you on mute?
Yes, Prabhu, we are just going to just give me 2 minutes.
Okay, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, दामोदर की Nitai Gaur Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shri Radha Damodar Bhagwan ki.
Jai.
Jai Gaur Premanande Hari.
Hari Hari Bol. Jai Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.
Kirtan group ki Jai. Thank you very much, Mataji. Wonderful Kirtan. Hari Bol.
Very nice.
Oh, we see Ajit Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam all Gaurish to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Prabhu, Hare Krishna, and Ghosh
Hare
Prabhupada,
Krishna,
and Pranam,
Prabhu.
Ghosh Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam, Ghosh Prabhupada, Jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad Pranam.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for joining. So please take over.
We thank you, Mataji Prabhu, for that very, very ecstatic kirtan. It was so wonderful. It was very nice to participate and hear that wonderful kirtan. So thank you so much. Very nice. Especially to hear Damodar Ashtakam during this month of Kartik is always very, very pleasing. Very wonderful. So we can start with the reading of the verses, text 8 and 9. I think today we can do 8 and 9. Last time we had done through 7. So would one of the children like to do the reading of the verse?
Kids, Mukund Prabhu. Suhurat Prabhu. Prajna Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prajna can read, Prabhuji.
Prajna.
Come this side. Okay, 2.10.
Nahi prapashyami mama panudiyat.
Nahi prapasya mama nupadyat.
Yakchokam uchanosanam indriyam.
Yachokam uchoshanam indriyanam.
Avapya bhumav ashapatam hridam.
Avapya
Rajyam suranam api chadipatyam. Should I read the truth?
Yeah.
I can find no means to drive away this reef which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel, even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. And the next verse, text 9, please. Somebody like to read that?
Suhurat Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Sanjay Ovacha Evam Ovacha
Sanjay Vacha
Evam Yuktva Hrishikesham
Evam
Hrishikesam
Purakesha Param Tapaha
Gunakesha Parantapaha
Govindam Yochi Ita Govindam
Nayotsya iti
Govindam
Yuktva Tushinam Babuva Aha
Uktava Tushiyam
Yes, having spoken thus, Arjun chastiser the enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall fight, not fight, and fell silent.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So now we'll just proceed with the discussion. Quickly, the invocation prayers. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Brahmami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, very nice verses again. Today, as we continue discussing Arjun's situation. So in text 8, he says, I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it, even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. And then in text 9, Sanjay Uvacha, Eva Muktava Rishikesham Gunakesha Parantapa Na Yotsya Iti Govindam Uktava Tushnim Bhaguva. So, in continuation of the approach that we had discussed the previous time, or last two times, in fact, we are seeing that through this text 9, Arjuna is continuing to explain to Krishna what his objections are. He's explaining his objections to why he didn't want to fight. And Krishna will start instructing him starting from text 11. Text 10 will be an introduction to the instructions that Krishna is going to give him, but from text 11, Krishna will start instructing him. So what is happening up until now? Up until now in chapter 2, Arjun has described his dilemma and he is surrendering to Krishna. So this is the stage of surrender, because until he surrenders, Krishna will not give him instruction. So the instruction starts in text 11, and today we are going to see in text 8 and 9, Arjun continuing to surrender to Krishna. Now, 2 weeks ago, we had discussed how Krishna was trying to motivate Arjun by giving him the spiritual references. So in that context of self-confidence, we had used the acronym SELF, S-E-L-F. Does anybody remember? S stood for spirituality. Spirituality. So the connection that we have based on spirituality. Who are we? Based on our spiritual connection. So that's why we said, okay, we are disciples of so and so guru, but we are following the line of Srila Prabhupada. And that is what gives us confidence that we are on a very bona fide path. So when we feel like we don't have answers to what our duty is, we remind ourselves who we belong to. We belong to the family of Prabhupada, we belong to the family of Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, we are their followers. That gives us confidence. That gives us confidence that we will find the answers to our dilemma and we'll be able to address our situation based on scriptural injunction. That's where our confidence comes from. And in order to motivate Arjun, to give him confidence, Krishna called him by various names: Parth, Aryan, etc. If you remember that. So today also that there is continuation of that going on, especially in text 9. Krishna is being referred to as Rishikesh, Arjun is being referred to as Gunakesh and Parantapa. So that theme is continuing. So with that little bit of background, I wanted to follow the system that we always have, which is if somebody wants to just quickly recap what we discussed last week, and then we'll continue with this discussion. Muktasanga Prabhu.
Last week, actually, Arjuna, he says that it's better to beg rather than fighting. So that's one point. And secondly, he's slowly coming into that detachment mode, from fifth sloka and sixth sloka. So he's trying to give up. And seventh sloka, he says that I'm totally confused. I don't know what to do, whether to fight or not to fight. Krishna, I'm surrendering unto you. Okay, take me as your disciple and guide me. What exactly to be done? Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava. Prichami tvam dharma sammuda cheta. Yachreyasyam nishchitam bruhitami shishyasteham shadimam tvam bhutonyam. So that is, he's surrendering as a disciple. Now Krishna starts it. So so this is about last week, but my question here is I'm confused basically, because this we just read this sloka, right? Ninth and eighth and ninth. So here he still says that Govinda, I shall not fight, right? Already seventh sloka he has surrendered. So now he should be ready to accept whatever Krishna says and he has to do, right? Still he is lamenting. Eighth and ninth he is still lamenting. So his lamentation should have stopped at seventh, because he says, I'm surrendering. Once he surrenders, there is no point in lamenting again, because Krishna is going to give him medicine anyways. But again, eighth and ninth, again he's starting lamenting. No, I cannot fight these people. I cannot, so that is where my confusion is. So
Good question, Prabhu. So I will definitely address that. Does anybody else want to add anything to it, or?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I would like to add a couple more. Like in the 2.5, 2.4, he asked a logical question saying that you are the killer of the enemies. So which means you're the one who kills the enemies within us. But then how can you tell me, why are you telling me to kill the own teachers and the relatives? Like you don't do that. And then in the second 2.5 and 2.6 mainly, he's ready renunciation, so he's ready to give up. So that's one sign that who is ready for liberation. So in 2.6 also we explained that. And then the last 2.7, Arjuna clearly said that I'm your disciple. So that's the last stage where he surrendered. So just briefly, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Those great points. Anybody else would like to say something? Okay, so I think nobody else wants to say anything. So, Muktasanga Prabhuji, to your point about why after text 7 he is still continuing with his lamentation. So basically, you're right, he has surrendered to Krishna, but he is still venting. the momentum of lamentation is continuing. And that is what is being highlighted here, that this lamentation is such a strong thing that the mind that we have does two things. It hankers and it laments. Hankers, laments, hankers, laments. That is a function of the mind. And so Arjun's mind is being revealed here, and it is being displayed that how strong this tendency for the mind to hanker and lament is. And so in the previous two verses, Arjun had actually demonstrated a tendency to be renounced by saying that, I don't want material opulence. I don't want anything. It is okay to live by begging, in which he demonstrated his detachment and at the same time his attachment, because attachment was to the bodily relatives and detachment was from material opulence. So the lamentation is continuing even after he has surrendered. And that's why these two verses are designed to demonstrate the power of lamentation. It is so strong. And that's why the right course of action, though, is to surrender to the Guru, because he will help us overcome this tendency for lamentation and hankering. I hope that helps.
Yes, Prabhu, definitely. Thank you.
Welcome.
Prabhuji, one small question, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mother.
You just said that Arjuna's mind was hankering, but then he was only lamenting, like hankering, literal meaning is like having a strong desire. So how can we say that he was hankering? I mean, I'm not following that part, Prabhuji.
Okay, sure, Mati. Over here, he is not hankering. What I was saying was that the mind has two businesses, one to hanker and the other to lament. Either it is hankering or it is lamenting. So here Arjun is lamenting. So, but both of these tendencies are so strong. So as Muktasanga Prabhu said, even after surrendering in text 7, why is he continuing to lament in 8 and 9? It's because while he has surrendered, that's the right thing to do. Now he should be quiet and should say, okay, now how should I fix this? But he's still, the momentum of lamentation is continuing.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so in text, so now we'll continue with the discussion for text 8 and 9. So Arjun says, I can find no means to drive away this grief. I can find no means. And that is actually a good sign, because it shows his realization that anything of this material world, anything of this material creation is not sufficient to give us happiness. And that's why Arjuna is saying, I can find no means to drive away this grief. And then he makes another very important point, actually. He says, I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. So any amount of material opulence to the extent of matching the opulence of the demigods in the heavenly planets, Arjuna is saying that that will not give me happiness or satisfaction, that will not drive away my grief. Why is Arjuna saying this? Arjuna is on the battlefield and his option is to fight and win the kingdom. But he has come to this point of realization that even if he wins that kingdom, it will not be sufficient to give him the satisfaction that he's looking for. In other words, Arjun is summarizing for us that whatever material opulence you may hanker for in this material world, even if you get it, there is always so much endeavor, there is always so much trouble that comes along with it, that it is not satisfying in the end. And on top of everything, it is temporary. You put in so much of effort to get some material benefit. At the end of the day, it doesn't last forever. It is temporary. So that kind of, he is for us highlighting the futility of material opulence and material progress. Even though everybody in this material world has material desires, has material aspirations, and there's hankering. There's hankering. Today, in the political scenario, for example, you are seeing what one party is doing. They're trying everything to hold on to power. It is so attractive that they're trying to do everything to hold on to power, thinking that it will make them happy. And here Arjun is saying the opposite. He's saying, I have realized that even if I win this kingdom, I will not be happy. So the instruction to us is that we have material needs and we have to work to fulfill those material needs. But the needs are not the same as desires. Material desires will never ever be fully fulfilled. Because as they say, man proposes, super soul disposes. Man may propose, I want this, I want this, I want this, but it is the super soul, the Paramatma within us, Sarvasichamedi Sanivishto Mattasmitir Jnanam Aponam Cha, that he is in our heart, he knows our past, present, and future, and he awards us what we deserve. What we desire, we may not deserve. So only the super soul knows what we deserve, and therefore he disposes. Man can only propose. But Arjun has reached that stage of realization where he says that even if I win opulences compared to the demigods in heavenly kingdoms, I will not be happy. That is a very, very, very profound statement. It is a summary of an instruction that Krishna gives us. It is completely aligned with Krishna's main instruction in Bhagavad Gita in 1866, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam. That surrender to me. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshikshami masucha. That just surrender to me and I will free you from all sinful reactions. Why surrender to me? So that you can come back to the spiritual world. Why come back to the spiritual world? Because that's where we will be eternally happy. Why will we be eternally happy there? Because that's our constitutional position. That is where we've come from. That is where we need to actually be. As spirit souls, we are entrapped in this material body. We don't need to be in this material body. Janma Mrityu, Jara Vyadi, birth, death, old age, disease, these four miseries, nobody can escape when you're in this material body. And these four miseries cannot touch you when you're in the spiritual world, in your spiritual body. Krishna says, like a fish is unhappy out of water, you are unhappy outside of the spiritual world. So the goal is to come back to the spiritual world. And to come back to the spiritual world, you have to surrender to Krishna. But if you keep hankering from material opulence, having ways to make our material situation more and more comfortable, then we'll never go back to the spiritual world because that will not be our desire. And that's what Arjun is indicating here. He's saying, I have realized nothing in this material world can make me happy, even if I win a kingdom. And therefore, Krishna, you please kindly instruct me. So Prabhupada says that at this point, you see, up until now, Arjun gave references from principles of moral code, etc. So he displayed his knowledge of the Shastras. And Krishna is saying, or in this verse, what is being implied is that Arjun's knowledge of the Shastras couldn't help solve his problem. That's why he was saying, I can find no means by which to drive away this grief. So his knowledge of the Shastra was not helping. Then Prabhupada says, and it was impossible for him to solve such perplexities without the help of a spiritual master like Lord Krishna. He says, academic knowledge, scholarship, high position, etc. are all useless in solving the problems of life. Help can only be given by a spiritual master like Krishna. So Krishna or his bona fide representative are the right sources to approach if we want the solution of life. And so in this connection, so Prabhupada has given a couple of very nice quotes, one from CC, Kiba Vipra, Kiba Nyasi, etc., where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that whether a person is a learned scholar or a Brahman or a sannyasi, unless he is master of science of Krishna, he cannot be a guru. So the qualification of a guru is being described in this purport, that one who is fully Krishna conscious himself or herself can impart that knowledge to the aspiring disciple. And that is the right person, not just a person who's a scholar, not just a person who's very rich or opulent. So in other words, Arjun was surrendering to the right source. And then Prabhupada goes on to say, if economic development and material comforts could drive away one's lamentation for family, social, and national inabilities, then Arjun would not have said what he said. Now, in this connection, there is a very nice verse from Bhagavatam in the context of Prahlad Maharaj trying to offer prayers to Nrsimhadev to pacify him. After Nrsimhadev had killed Hiranyakashipu, he was very angry. And that anger, nobody could pacify Nrsimhadev. So Prahlad Maharaj was sent forward by Brahmaji that you please pacify him. And Prahlad Maharaj offered many prayers. And one of the prayers that he offered was, and I'll just read just the translation, just a short part of it. He says, my dear Lord, you have created this material world of 16 constituents, but you are transcendental to the material qualities. In other words, these qualities are under your full control. Therefore, the time element is your representation. My Lord, no one can conquer you. As for me, however, I am being crushed by the wheel of time. And therefore, I surrender fully unto you. Now kindly take me under the protection of your lotus feet. Prahlad Maharaj says to Nrsimhadev that I am being crushed by the wheel of time. In chapter 11, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, when he displays universal form, Kal Asmi, time I am, the devourer of everything. Meaning the law of nature is such, Krishna has put it in such a way that with time, everything is destroyed. And Prahlad Maharaj is saying that I am being crushed by the wheel of time, meaning I'm taking birth, being killed, taking birth, dying, taking birth, dying. And this cycle is continuing. He says, so I'm being crushed by the wheel of time. Think about it, the wheel goes round and round, right? You take birth, you live for some time, you grow, dwindle, vanish. Take birth, grow, stay for some time, dwindle, vanish. So this is like a wheel going round and round, round and round. Prahlad Maharaj is saying, I am being crushed by this wheel of time. Therefore, because he realizes I want to get out of it. He says, therefore, I surrender fully unto you. He says, now kindly take me under the protection of your lotus feet. And the Sanskrit for that, he says, is Nishpidyamanam upakarsha vibho prapannam. Vibho prapannam. Vibho meaning, O Supreme Person, prapannam, I surrender unto you. Nishpidyamanam. Nishpidyamanam means being crushed under this wheel of time. So this is the sum and summary of material life. We are being crushed under the wheel of time. Nishpidyamanam. Then he says, Upakarsha. O Nrsimhadev, please do me, please shower your mercy on me. Upakarsha. Vibho prapannam. I surrender unto you. Please shower your mercy on me. Free me from the cycle of birth and death. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that Prahlad Maharaj was praying to Nrsimhadev. He didn't ask him for any material benediction. He said, just please free me from the cycle of birth and death. And that is exactly what Arjuna is doing here also. He's saying nothing, even if you give me the opulence of the heavenly kingdoms, that won't drive away this grief. And what is this grief? On the surface, this grief that he's facing is that he's going to have to kill his near and dear ones. But the deeper grief is that he's in this material world. The deeper grief is that he's in this material world. That's why, you see, this material world has a way of sending one perplexity after another. You don't ask for it, it just comes. We want no perplexity, but this material world is such that it comes automatically. And so Arjun is saying, I cannot solve this perplexity by myself. Any opulence you give me that will not solve this perplexity, kindly instruct me. So this is what Arjun is saying in text 8. He's summarizing the position of a living entity who is Nishpidyamanam. In Prahlad Maharaj's words, he's Nishpidyamanam, being crushed by the wheel of time. And just like Prahlad Maharaj says, Nishpidyamanam upakarsha vibho prapannam, that I surrender unto you, my Lord, please save me. Same way Arjuna is saying, same way, Krishna, I surrender to you, please save me. And then, because he's saying this, in the next verse, he's actually being referred to as a very wise man. Why? Because in the next verse, Arjuna is being addressed as Gunakesha, the conqueror of ignorance. Gunakesha. So Sanjay Vacha Eva Muktva Rishikesham Gunakesha Parantapa. He calls him by two, he pays him two compliments. Gunakesha, one who has conquered ignorance, and Parantapa, killer of the enemies. So why is he being called Gunakesha here? Because he has realized the position of ignorance of the material, of the embodied living entity. Gunakesha, we are in ignorance, trying to find happiness in the material world by this arrangement, that arrangement, this arrangement, that arrangement. But one who realizes that no arrangement in this material world can give you eternal happiness, it is only temporary happiness it can give you, then that person has conquered the ignorance of this material world. That person has understood the limitation of this material world. And that is what Arjun did here. So that's why he was called Guna. And then the other word that was used to describe him, again, notice how this is all in relation to the theme that we started 2-3 weeks ago, that Arjun is being given self-confidence by realizing his spiritual connection. So Gunakesha is spiritual connection, one who has conquered ignorance. One who has conquered ignorance. That is a spiritual qualification. And Sanjay refers to him as Parantapa, killer of the enemy. And that is being used here, that term is being used here because Dhritarashtra was thinking that, okay, now Arjun will not fight. Very good. That now my sons can gain the kingdom. But Sanjay is referring to him and saying, not so soon, not so quickly. Parantapa, he is killer of the enemy. He has surrendered to Krishna. Krishna will give him the guidance. With that guidance, he will fight. Because he is Parantapa. And he has surrendered to the right source. That is the original spiritual master. He surrendered to Krishna, the greatest spiritual master, the most bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, he is Parantapa. And then Krishna is being referred to with two with two adjectives here, or two names that are specific to Krishna, Rishikesha and Govinda. Rishikesha is master of the senses.
Can you tell me what the toilet is?
As we know that what is the definition of bhakti? Rishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. The verse is Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tat paritmena nirmalam Rishikena sevanam bhakti ruchyate. So the definition of bhakti is that we use our senses to please the master of the senses. Rishikena, Rishik means senses, Rishikena means with the senses. So with our senses, what do we do? Rishikena, Rishikesha. Rishikesha is master of the senses. Isha means controller, Rishik means senses. Controller of the senses is Krishna, Rishikesha. So what are we supposed to do in bhakti? Rishikena, with our senses, Rishikesha, to Krishna, Sevanam. With our senses, serve the master of the senses, Krishna or Rishikesh. That is Bhakti Ruchyate. That is the definition of bhakti. And Sarvapadi Vinurmuktam. Give up all desires for material gain and simply serve Krishna. So because Krishna is master of senses, he described it, Evam Uktava Rishikesham, that Arjun knew that his senses were giving him trouble. That's why he is referring to Krishna as Rishikesha. You have controlled the senses, help me control my senses. The senses and the mind. Prahlad Maharaj says there is no enemy in this world except the mind. Mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So here Arjun's mind is troubling him. As far as everything else is concerned, nothing else is troubling him. No enemy is troubling him. Nobody is strong enough to stand in front of Arjun. Arjun can win over all of them in war. His mind is troubling him. And his mind is more powerful than any of the powerful yodhas who were assembled there. So much so powerful that Arjun is saying, Krishna, I am this grief. I can find no way of getting rid of it. This grief being caused by the mind is so great that I can't find any way. If Arjun was being challenged to a battle by someone, he would have gladly accepted the challenge and defeated the person. But how to defeat the mind? So to defeat the mind, you need the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. And that's why Arjun says, I surrender to you, Krishna. And then he calls Krishna as Rishikesha, master of senses, and Govinda. Govinda also means one who gives pleasure to the cows. Go is cow, Vinda means one who gives pleasure. And Go stands for cows and senses. Krishna is called Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and the senses and actually the land also. In Vrindavan, they say Govinda. Krishna gives pleasure to the cow, the land, and the senses. So he's saying, oh Govinda, you can drive away this grief. And then he says, oh Govinda, I will not fight. So very intelligent. Arjun knows that his real enemy is his mind. And he's referring to Krishna, asking for help, surrendering to him, and referring to Krishna as master of the senses and master of the mind. He says, my mind, Arjun is accepting that it is his mind that is giving him trouble. Therefore, Govinda or Rishikesh, you are the one who can control my mind. You are the one who can give my mind happiness. You please give me guidance. So Prabhupada says this indicated that he would soon be free from the false lamentation resulting from family affection, etc. So Arjun has displayed his devotional qualification by surrendering to Krishna and by revealing that the mind is the greatest enemy and that Krishna is the one who can help us control our mind. So it's 8:45, Prabhu. I'll stop here and then we can open up for discussion, questions, comments.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I have a question, Prabhuji.
Yes,
In the verse it says Guda Kesha, but you were saying Guna Kesha.
No, sorry, I mispronounced it. It is Gunakesha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it is Guda Kesha, right?
Gudakesha, yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Welcome. Thank you for pointing that out, Mother. I'll be careful with my pronunciation.
Yeah, I was
No
thinking
problem.
along the same line.
Thank you, Mataji.
So, I think for ordinary souls, Prabhu, I think even though according to us, Arjuna is more qualified, he's a very knowledgeable person. And I mean, even for Arjuna, it takes such a long time to be convinced of his, of his, of the mind. The mind always laments and hankering for things.
Yeah.
And it's the same token, but we have to say also, if for Arjuna it is happening, even though Krishna was nearby, who is the he's Govinda, and he always protects him. I mean, can you imagine what will happen to us? So I think it will be like 100,000 more effect on us. And my mind, if you don't have a controlled mind, your mind can play tricks, and we will be more confused, hundreds or thousands of times more confused. Worse than Arjuna.
Yes.
So I guess this is what it is. So unless you have a real guru to surrender and surrender to Krishna, so it will be difficult for you to face all these things, ordinary situations.
Absolutely, Mataji. And that kind of also points to our good fortune, that having the shelter of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada and his representatives, we are in a very safe position. We're in a very advantaged position. Because one of the other things that Prahlad Maharaj says in this same set of verses where he was trying to pacify Nrsimhadev, Prahlad Maharaj says to Nrsimhadev that please bless me with the association of a pure devotee of yours, so that I may be able to learn how to serve you from that person. Prahlad Maharaj asks for the association of a pure devotee.
Okay. I guess from this, up to this, I think we have to consider more, what is our situation in our day-to-day life. And I think, we should not be too much perturbed, and I think surrender to Guru and Krishna.
Yes.
So we have much more problems now in the Kali Yuga right now with all these problems going on.
Right.
Yeah.
So another interesting point, Prabhu, I would like to add, it's not a question, just a comment, but see here, the last sentence, thus Dhritarashtra's joy would be frustrated since Arjuna would be enlightened by Krishna and would fight to the end. So even Sanjaya, I think he knows Dhritarashtra's mind. Dhritarashtra is so egoistic, right? So when Sanjaya is saying, then he might be seeing in Dhritarashtra's face that there is a frustration, sadness, because Dhritarashtra didn't want it, or Dhritarashtra always had a doubt that in Kurukshetra the fight may not happen because of Dharmakshetra. So now, because Arjuna is surrendering to Krishna, and Krishna is about to preach to Arjuna, so Dhritarashtra's feeling is changing slightly. He's becoming a little sad, frustrated, because he clearly knows upfront that if Krishna starts preaching to Arjuna, definitely Arjuna will change and he'll end up fighting. That is for sure. So that even Dhritarashtra knows. Dhritarashtra knows. He knew Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So
yes, a very nice observation, Prabhu. That's Yes.
And also in the shloka, Sanjaya already gave a hint saying, killer of enemies. So Sanjaya knew, and he was already sure. That's very interesting, Prabhuji.
Yeah, that's why he used the term Parantapa there. He said, Dhritarashtra, don't jump to any conclusion so quickly. Just because Arjuna is saying, I will not fight, doesn't mean he actually won't fight. Krishna is there to motivate him.
see, it's also, I heard in one of the lectures that if really these two people, right, Krishna and Dhritarashtra, if these two people wanted, the war could have stopped. So out of all the people, these two people, they really wanted, the war could have stopped, because Krishna, when he goes to peacemaking, right, when he goes, and then he says to Dhritarashtra that you control your son not to fight for the, and I'll control Pandavas not to fight. So Pandavas are ready to serve under your son, no problem. Just give them 5 pieces of land. So that's it. So Pandavas, I'll make Pandavas work for you, for your son. Okay. Just stop your son and I'll stop Pandavas. If these two people wanted, really, the war could have stopped, actually.
True.
And Dhritarashtra knows that even if we give 5 small villages, these Pandavas will conquer anything in the world.
Yeah.
That's why whether you give or you don't give, what is going to happen?
Well, and Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan didn't even want to give those 5 villages to them.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, Dhritarashtra might have thought, it's just my thinking, Prabhuji, that even if we give, Pandavas are so great that they will conquer the war, conquer and then, achieve the entire kingdom. Then again, his sons have to be like a slave or whatever. Instead, why don't let's not give, and if the fight happens, at least they'll have like a Veeramaran, they say, right? You die in the war as a Kshatriya.
Dhritarashtra was so attached to his son, he diplomatically told Krishna that when Krishna asked Dhritarashtra to control his son, right? Dhritarashtra said, no, I'm sorry, Krishna, even if I tell Dhritarashtra, he won't listen to me. Dhritarashtra didn't want to tell Duryodhan, but still, because of that attachment, he said, Krishna, even if I tell, he won't listen, so that's why I won't tell.
That's why I won't tell.
I cannot control him.
Yeah.
He said like, it's out of control.
So one thing, Prabhu, little background, not regarding this sloka, but
yes,
Duryodhan was very, very, very afraid of, and he had so much respect and reverence to his mother. Father, he was not listening, that's there. But for his mother, actually, he had high respect to his mother. Whatever his mother said, he would listen. So his mother couldn't stop him. His mother didn't stop him to fight.
She was like in those days, the husband's wishes generally prevailed. And she knew that Dhritarashtra's mind was set upon having the kingdom. Gandhari herself, she was very, very pious and being very dedicated to serving her husband. She knew his mind very well. And so the thing was, she couldn't change his mind. She could have influenced Duryodhan.
Yeah, she didn't. That's what my question is actually. Why couldn't she influence Duryodhan straight away and say, don't fight my son, you're in the wrong direction? Because she also very well knew about the Krishna status. Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. She knew that. Yeah, she could have told.
I think by that time, she was the influence of her brother Shakuni and husband Dhritarashtra was overpowering on Duryodhan to the extent that I think she realized that even if she had told him not to fight, his mind was made up. So that's why she then used the power of her vision to give him the kavach. She said, okay, I'll try to protect him this way. After all, she's a mother. She wanted to protect her child. She tried to protect him this way because I think she realized that it was past a stage where Shakuni or Dhritarashtra would agree to any peace offer. That's my thinking.
Another version is Krishna is in this. So maybe she must have known that whatever she says is not going to work. He's already gone too far into fighting and destroying the family. So Duryodhana was so bad. So she knew probably with her drishti, she was foreseeing because she was a chaste woman, she could see things. And she also know whenever there is a involvement with Krishna, whenever Krishna is involved in something, so they are going to be victorious and they are going to be defeated. So anyway, my son is not going to listen to me. He's been bad throughout his lifetime. So what's the point of me making any, any comments or anything, any suggestions? So he's not going to ever listen. So said, let go probably,
So lifelong ambition for Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana to be the king.
Yeah. So even whatever little efforts she takes, so it's not going to be very productive. So she's going to let go. Whatever happens, happens. It's already been decided by Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my view.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, the other thing what we could learn from one of the points from 10th sloka is that, you know, in spite of that very troublesome scenario Arjuna is facing in the midst of the battlefield, right? Because Arjuna couldn't control his senses. At the same time, on the complete contrary, Krishna, who is Rishikesha means he can control his senses. He's the master of the senses, right? So he's always smiling. That is in the translation. Krishna is always smiling. So be it whatever the condition is, you know, Arjuna is completely lamenting, devastated, sad, frustrated, all that. But Krishna is always smiling right from the beginning, because he shows that he is the master of the senses, Rishikesha. So that means if we control our senses, we also will always be smiling.
right. You're blissful in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
Satchidananda Vigraha.
Yeah.
Eternally happy, eternally blissful, eternally full of knowledge.
Yeah.
Krishna wants us to get to that stage. Saying, just surrender to me and come to that stage. Problem is, we don't want to surrender.
Yeah, even though Arjuna, he can control his sleep, Gudakesha, right? He can control his sleep. He can aim. He had so much concentration, so much mind control he had. In spite of having all those qualities, still he went into the frustration mode, lamentation mode. Why? Because he was not complete controller of the senses. Like Krishna is complete. He's all complete in all of his qualities. So that is why Krishna is happy, smiley.
Yes, very nice.
Krishna is smiling.
And just to add a quick note, Prabhuji, though Arjuna was able to control his senses, but not his mind. And only that's why he went to Krishna.
I have a question, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji.
Still, it's so confusing because Arjuna was in Dwapara Yuga. People in Dwapara Yuga had better intelligence. And moreover, Arjuna was friend of Krishna. He had a lot of intelligence and he had a lot of qualities. Still, it is very difficult for him to get out of that confusion, surrender to the spiritual master. So we are already conditioned Kali Yuga, and we have very poor intelligence, and we are so ignorant. So bewildering. Like, how can we become so serious in this path? Like for Arjuna itself, it was so difficult. Like, where do we fall in that? We are not even like not even an atom, maybe.
Right.
So
yeah, I understand your question, Mataji, and I think the way to think about this is, first of all, do not compare yourself with Arjun, because that's what was making you worried. You're saying if Arjun couldn't control, how can we control? So don't compare. Why not compare? No, on one hand, you may say, well, it's a fair comparison, because if he couldn't control, what is the chance for us? But the way to think about it is that Arjun was being put in that position of confusion by Krishna. He was not inherently confused. He's Krishna's friend. He's a Sakha. He's eternally liberated. But he was put into that position to represent our bewilderment. Arjun being bewildered was actually not Arjun being bewildered. It was, he's play acting. This is a drama. We are bewildered and Arjun is acting as if he's like one of us. So that's why don't worry that if Arjun was bewildered, what is the hope for us? Second thing, just like we discussed, You see, Mahajana Yena Gata Sapanta, meaning we follow in the footsteps of Mahajans, the great souls. Prahlad Maharaj, he's a Mahajan. Of the 12 Mahajans, Prahlad Maharaj is one. Arjun is not a Mahajan, but he's a great soul. We follow in their footsteps. And what are the footsteps that, or what is the instruction they are giving us? Surrender unto Krishna. Or surrender to Krishna's representative. That is equivalent to surrendering to Krishna. So your concern is very valid that we are in Kali Yuga, and if these difficulties were there in Dwapara Yuga, what about us in Kali Yuga? The solution is the same. Krishna is above Kali Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, any Yuga. Krishna is above. So Krishna says, Sarvadhaman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. He said, just surrender to me. I will protect you. And so Mahaprabhu, that's why Krishna came as Mahaprabhu, and he said, in Kali Yuga, Manda Sumanda Mateo Manda Bhagya Hi Upadrata. That in Kali Yuga, intelligence is Manda, fortune is Manda, lifespan is Manda, everything is small, intelligence. So that's why as Mahaprabhu, he gave us an appropriate solution for this yuga, for our limited intelligence and limited lifespan. Chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So it is as effective as the other processes. So Kritaya Dayato Vishnu Tretayam Yagato Mukhai Dwapare Paricharyaya. So in Dwapara Yuga, this elaborate sacrifices, Kalautad Hari Kirtana. So in Kali Yuga, the solution is Hari Kirtan, chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So the Lord gives appropriate solution for appropriate yuga. So don't, I mean, it is as an intelligent and serious person who's serious about devotional progress, you are asking these questions. And so it's a good thing to have these questions. But good news is the process is also equally simple in Kali Yuga, which is chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra and following the regulative principles.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome, Mataji. Other questions, Prabhu?
So what we understand from this, Prabhu, is, I mean, Krishna has arranged all this play in a platform. So this is a lesson for us to learn from that. And we follow the principles of Srila Prabhupada according to this Kali Yuga, chanting and worshiping Krishna and following the 4 regulative principles. That's all we have to take it from here.
That's exactly right, Mataji. And that is basically what it is. Prabhupada says at the end of the day, it is very simple. People asked him, in this lifetime, will we be able to go back to Godhead? And Prabhupada's reply to that was, how long does it take you to surrender to Krishna? And Prabhupada says it takes 1 second. Surrender to Krishna takes 1 second. If you are serious, 1 second. That's all that is required to go back to Godhead. Krishna wants us to come back to Godhead. So if Krishna wants us to come back, and if we cooperate with him, there'll be no difficulty.
Prabhu, I mean, another thing is, okay, we are doing this chanting and following and doing this and all. How do we know that Krishna allows us? Is there anything that he shows us, something that we, because, we are in the material world, we are still looking for something solid, something, I mean,
Looking
this
for
is all a
evidence.
spiritual matter. I mean, we are connected to Krishna, we are following the regulative principles, we are all chanting whatever we are supposed to do. I think we are trying our best to do it. We may not be perfect. We are not perfect, but we are trying our best. So how do we know that he's, I know we have faith. How do we know that he's reciprocating? Do we have some kind of solid evidence? Something just like a scientific things that we know when you mix these two chemicals, you are going to get something. So, I mean, do we have a solid evidence in this?
We have solid evidence. We definitely have solid evidence. The most solid evidence we have is the written word of Prabhupada. It is in black and white. Prabhupada has written all this. He's given it to us in writing. Generally, when something is given to us in writing, it is considered law. You can take it to any court, it will be honored. Prabhupada has given to us in writing. Second thing, I understand exactly how you're feeling when you're saying this, I think, because we all feel this at some time, that I wish Krishna would just appear for 1 second before me and say, okay, yes, this is right, right? The devotee has that thought in their mind. But the way Prabhupada has answered that question is, Prabhupada says, why are you looking for evidence of Krishna? One, ado Shraddha. You see, the starting point is Shraddha, or faith. Our Acharya said, first you have faith, then you do sadhu sangha, then anartha nivritti, etc. So, but because we have faith, we realize that when we look around us, when you say solid evidence, just look around you. Every day the sun rises at a predetermined time. Today, if you go on, there are so many websites, they will tell you what is the exact time of sunrise tomorrow and what time sunset tomorrow. Right? And it never fails. The sun doesn't come up due to coincidence. It is due to Krishna's arrangement. The moon doesn't come up due to coincidence. It is Krishna's arrangement. Look at your own body. It is such a complex machine, such a complex machine. How has this been created? And at some point we know the body grows old, then it dwindles, then it vanishes. How is this happening, and how is it that the Shastra has documented everything and we are seeing exactly this happening? This is evidence. This is evidence that the Lord is there. He is controlling everything. He's guiding everything. We may not be able to see the Lord right now. You see? And of course, there's this famous verse that says that Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved gayam indri. That Shri Krishna's form na bhaved gayam in indri. We cannot see it with our material senses, graham indriya. But then the next part of it says, Sevan mukhe hi jiva dao swam eva spurati yadaha. That if you serve the Lord, Sevan mukhe hi jiva adav. If you serve him with your jiva, tongue, adav means etc., tongue and other senses. Then swam eva spurati yadaha. Then the Lord will reveal himself to you. So how do we serve the Lord with our tongue? By chanting the holy name and taking Krishna Prasad. That is the duty of the tongue. The tongue vibrates the Lord's holy name and it tastes remnants of food offered to Krishna. And the tongue is supposed to be the most important of all senses. Jive phile visaya sagore taramadi jivati lomo surmati. We chant this every time before we eat prasad every day. Which means the tongue is the hardest sense of all to control. So if you engage your tongue in the service of the Lord, all other senses will follow. And when our senses are engaged in Krishna's service, they get purified and Krishna will reveal himself. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, don't try to see God. Don't try to see God. You try to please God. If you please him, he will reveal himself to you when he's pleased with you. You don't try to see him. That's Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's instruction. So the evidence is there, Mataji. I mean, all around us, the evidence of Krishna's presence is there. Nothing is happening coincidentally or automatically. Everything is happening under his arrangement. It would be nice if we could see him, but I think Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's instructions are very important to follow. Try to please him, Krishna will reveal himself to us. That Prabhupada says, have faith, have confidence. He will reveal himself to us. You just please him.
Yeah. I think we are, our senses are anyway contaminated, so many things. Even the rishis had so much of, so many years they had to do tapas to, just to have a glimpse of it. What can we say about us? We think we are doing perfectly, but we may not,
No, the good news is, even if we are not doing perfectly, we cannot do perfectly because, again, this is Kali Yuga, right? Mandas Mandamateo. This is Kali Yuga. So in Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Satya Yuga, people in Satya Yuga, they could meditate for thousands of years. They could become perfect because they had that much of lifespan, 100,000 years lifespan. So they had plenty of time to be able to become perfect. We have 100-year lifespan maximum, so we don't have the time. So that's why they say, but if you faithfully follow the process, if you're trying, where we realize that we are not perfect. That's why if we are humble and tolerant, and just continue to try, and Krishna will reciprocate. You see, we feel that, okay, one day, Krishna, you reciprocate, show me, then I know I'm on the right path, then I'll continue very nicely. That is barter system. You see, and that is our lack of faith. We are saying, Krishna, then just, I have faith, but I don't have 100% faith. So you just show me once according to my condition, according to my terms. My terms are just, you show me once, then I'll believe in you.
Sometimes we are curious as a human being, Sometimes, how many more years I'm going to be doing this?
Don't worry about that. I think because for millions of lifetimes, we haven't worried about Krishna. Now, at least in this lifetime, by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, mercy of Krishna, mercy of Prabhupada, we've gotten the association, we've gotten the instructions. We are on the path. Leave it to Krishna. If he could bring us to this path, do we know what we were in our last life? No idea. But today we know we are on this path. If Krishna could bring us to this point, regardless of what we were in our previous life, if he could bring us to this point, he will take us to Guru Vrindavan also.
Sure.
Otherwise, why would he bring us to this point?
Right. Yeah, we are quite fortunate, I think, lucky to be in the company of the Vaishnavas and I think Krishna.
Oh, yes.
And
that
I think
itself
all because of Prabhupada.
Sorry. And that itself is Krishna's mercy. Being what we are now and how he brought us to this stage.
Right.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
I think we are good, Prabhu. So,
okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So before we end up this call, Ajit Krishna Prabhu, we would like to share some news that our congregation members here, he is there, Ram Sham Prabhu, and his wife, Karmi name is Nirmala Mataji, but last week they got initiated by His Holiness Radha Govind Swami Maharaj on Zoom. So his name changed from Ram Singh Prabhu to Ram Sham Das, and her name is Nikunja Leela Devi Dasi. So
wonderful.
Please bless them, for their spiritual journey. Yeah. So let's all chant one time Maha Mantra to them, please. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Ram,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Congratulations.
We all wish him.
Congratulations, Ramjam Prabhu.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Yeah, wonderful.
So very, very fortunate. His Holiness Radhagovinda Maharaj is a storehouse of Bhagavatam nectar.
All glory to Guru Maharaj.
It's very wonderful.
Yeah.
I actually had the good fortune of getting very nice darshan of Radhagovinda Maharaj in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
And, he's got a very nice apartment there, at least at that time when I visited, he had. So he sat down there in his apartment and gave very nice, sweet katha. So sweet.
Nice. Hare Krishna.
So let's all pray for him also, because his health is up and down these days.
Right.
So let's pray for him. When we chant, please keep him in your prayers for his health's betterment.
Yeah, well, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Ajit Krishna Prabhu. It's a wonderful session. And as it is tomorrow Saturday we have 7:30 class by Adi Gadadhar Prabhu. Please join. That's all, Prabhu. We have. So.
Okay, Prabhuji. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha
Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti
Hare
Krishna Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Krishna Prabhu ki jai.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.